Welcome to Lore of the Ring, where we uncover the hidden roads of Middle-earth and tell the tales that Tolkien never wrote. Before we begin, take a moment to let us know in the comments where you're watching from and what time of day or night this narration has reached you. There is a place in Middle-earth where the sky weeps ash and the earth screams in tongues older than memory. A place where the very air tastes of sulfur and shadow, where stone bleeds fire, and where the horizon bends beneath the weight of something vast and terrible. This is no ordinary mountain. This is Orodruin, Mount Doom, the wound that will not heal, the forge that burns with purpose, the throne of fire upon which the fate of ages was wrought and broken. Stand at its base if you dare and feel the tremor beneath your feet. It is not the shaking of mere stone. It is a pulse, a rhythm, a heartbeat that predates the kingdoms of men, the realms of elves, even the rising of the sun itself. Liquid flame courses through veins of obsidian and basalt, roaring with a voice that drowns out thought. Black lightning splits the sky above the crater, and the winds carry whispers, not of words, but of malice, of hunger, of something watching from within the molten depths. The historians speak of Mount Doom as the place where Sauron forged the One Ring. They tell of the cracks of doom, where Isildur failed and Frodo succeeded. They describe the mountain's eruption, the fall of Barad-dûr, the end of the Dark Lord's dominion. But these are surface truths, thin as ash on water. They do not speak of what lies beneath. They do not ask the questions that haunt the oldest texts and the darkest dreams. Why this mountain? Why did Sauron, Lord of sorcery and ancient lore, choose Orodruin above all other places in Middle-earth to forge his masterwork? Was it merely convenience, a ready source of heat for his craft? Or did he know something that the wise did not? Did he recognize a power already dwelling there, coiled in the magma, waiting since the world's first dawn? The fire of doom is not simply fire. It does not behave as common flame behaves. It burns hotter than any earthly furnace. It unmakes enchantments. It consumes not just matter, but will itself. Even the mightiest artifacts of power, the rings forged by Celebrimbor, imbued with the strength of the Eldar, could only be destroyed in this flame. Why? What makes this fire different? What gives it the authority to undo what lesser fires cannot touch? The answer lies not in what Sauron brought to the mountain, but in what was already there. Orodruin is older than his malice. Its roots sink deeper than his dominion. It stands as a monument to forces that shaped the world before the first song was sung, before light and darkness knew their names. And in its depths, far below the cracks of doom, far beyond where any mortal has walked, something waits. Something that has always waited. The records are fragmentary, burned or lost in the ruin of Númenor, scattered in the fall of a region, whispered only in the last councils of the wise before they departed over the sea. But fragments remain, hints, echoes. The Eldar spoke of Orodruin with a dread they reserved for few places in Middle-earth. Even Galadriel, who had looked upon the light of the two trees, would not speak its name without sorrow. Even Gandalf, who walked in fire and shadow, descended into that mountain with the weight of ages upon him. What did they know? What did they see in the ancient texts, in the songs of the valor, in the memories carried from the elder days? What secret did the mountain keep, sealed beneath stone and flame, guarded by heat that could melt the will of kings? You stand now at the edge of that mystery. The camera of our tale descends, past the jagged cliffs of Gorgoroth, past the ashen plains where nothing grows, past the gates of the Samath Nor where the ring was forged and destroyed. Down into the heart of the mountain, where the light of the sun has never touched, where the air is thick with fumes that twist the mind, and the walls glow with a heat that is not entirely physical. And there, in the deepest chamber, where the magma churns and the stone hums with ancient resonance, something moves. Not the shifting of rock, not the surge of lava, something else, something vast. Something that has been waiting, silent and patient since before Sauron ever set foot in Mordor. The fire roars, the shadows deepen. And the mountain, Orodruin, the red flame, the doom of the ring, holds its breath. To speak of Mount Doom is to speak in half-truths and fragments. The full history of Orodruin was never written in any one book, never preserved in any single archive. What we know comes from scattered sources, crumbling manuscripts salvaged from the ruin of Númenor, verses sung in the halls of Rivendell, cryptic references in the Red Book of Westmark, and the private letters of Tolkien himself, who glimpsed through vision what the chroniclers of Middle-earth dared not fully record. The Silmarillion speaks of the shaping of Arda, of how the Valar descended into the void and gave form to the formless, raising mountains and carving seas. It tells of Melkor's jealousy, his corruption of the music, his twisting of the earth itself into shapes of malice and ruin. Mordor, we are told, was one such place, a land scarred and bent by his will, a fortress of stone and shadow raised in defiance of the light. But Orodruin is mentioned only briefly. A volcano, a forge, a place of fire in a land of ash. The texts do not linger. They do not explain. It is as though the writers themselves recoiled from speaking too much of it, as if naming it too often might draw its gaze. In the appendices to The Lord of the Rings, we learn that Sauron returned to Mordor in the Second Age and claimed the mountain as his seat of power. There, in the fires of the Samath Nor, he forged the one ring to dominate all others. The act is described as a supreme work of sorcery, a binding of his essence into gold so that his will might never fade. But how? By what process? By what art could a ring, an object, a thing of mere matter, hold the soul of a Maya, a being of spirit and fire? The unfinished tales offer glimpses. Gandalf speaks of the ring's power as tied intrinsically to the mountain. He warns that it can only be destroyed where it was made, in the fires that gave it form. This is not metaphor. This is a fundamental truth of its nature. The ring is bound to Orodruin, and Orodruin to the ring, in a union that transcends mere enchantment. Tolkien's letters reveal more. He wrote that the fires of Mount Doom were not ordinary flames, but something closer to the primal fires of creation, remnants of the world's forging, still burning in the deeps. He hinted that Sauron did not create this fire but harnessed it, bending an ancient force to his purpose. The mountain, Tolkien suggested, was already a place of power before Sauron ever arrived. We turn also to darker sources. The Chronicles of Númenor, before its fall, spoke of embassies sent to Mordor in the days of the Shadow. They returned, those few who returned, speaking of a mountain that lived, that watched, that remembered. The Númenorians, in their pride, dismissed these as the ravings of men broken by Sauron's sorcery. But after the downfall, when the seas swallowed their kingdom and their archives burned, those who survived wondered if perhaps the mountain's secrets had been greater than they knew. Even the elves, whose memories stretch back to the first rising of the stars, speak of Orodruin with unease. There are songs in Rivendell, never translated into the common tongue, that name the mountain as Orodruin, the flame of forever, a fire that will not die until the world itself is remade. Galadriel, in her mirror, saw visions of the mountain's heart, and what she saw she would not speak of, save to say that some fires were kindled before the world was young, and some of those fires still burned. What we piece together, then, is this. Orodruin is not merely a tool Sauron used. It is a relic, a remnant. A living wound in the fabric of Arda, where the world's oldest powers still simmer and seethe. And beneath the cracks of doom, where no mortal has walked and no chronicle records, the ancient texts hint at something more. A chamber sealed by time and stone, where the mountain's true heart beats, and where secrets darker than Sauron's malice lie buried in fire and shadow. Long before Sauron walked the earth, long before the first sunrise, long before even the elves awoke beneath the stars, the world was a canvas of chaos and song. Arda was young, raw, and molten, a battleground where the wills of the Valar clashed with the malice of Melkor, where mountains rose and fell in the span of a thought, where the very substance of creation was fluid, unformed, responsive to the music that shaped it. In those days, fire was not a tool but a force, not a servant but a presence. The Valar, descending from the timeless halls, brought with them the vision of Iluvatar's design, and chief among them was Alla the smith, who loved the bones of the earth and the craft of shaping. He raised the mountains as a sculptor raises clay. He carved the deep places, the roots of stone where metals slept in darkness. And in his forges, hidden within the earth, far from the light, he kindled fires that burned with the strength of creation itself. But Melkor, the fallen Vala, sought to corrupt all that Alle built. Where Alle raised mountains, Melkor shattered them. Where Alle kindled forges of craft and beauty, Melkor poured in his malice, twisting the flames into weapons of ruin. The land that would become Mordor was one such place, a realm scorched and broken by Melkor's wrath, shaped into a fortress of stone and shadow, a scar upon the face of Arda that would never fully heal. And at the heart of that scar, Orodruin rose. The mountain is ancient beyond reckoning. Geologists of our own world might describe it as a stratovolcano, a product of tectonic forces and magma chambers. But in the context of Middle-earth's deep mythology, Orodruin is something more. It is a monument to the War of the Powers, that titanic conflict between the Valar and Melkor that reshaped the world in its infancy. It is a place where the fires of creation and destruction met and mingled, where the boundaries between matter and spirit grew thin. Some scholars, those few who have dared to piece together the oldest fragments of lore, believe that Orodruin was once a forge of Alla himself, a place where he shaped metals in the earliest days, experimenting with the substances of Arda, crafting wonders that have long since been lost. If this is true, then the mountain's fire is not merely volcanic but primordial, a remnant of the Valar's own power, still burning after uncounted ages. Others whisper darker theories. They say that Melkor, in his jealousy and rage, desecrated Alle's forges, pouring his own malice into the flames so that what was once a tool of creation became an instrument of domination. They say that the fire of Orodruin is tainted at its source, that it burns with a hunger and a will that mortal flames do not possess. They say that the mountain itself is a wound, not merely in the landscape, but in the fabric of reality, a tear through which the discord of Melkor still seeps. Imagine, if you will, the world in those days. No sun, no moon, only the light of the stars, pale and distant, and the glow of fires burning deep within the earth. Orodruin would have been a beacon in the darkness, a pillar of red flame reaching toward the void, its light visible for hundreds of miles across the broken plains of Mordor. The Valor from their halls in Valinor would have seen it and known it as a sign of Melkor's dominion, a place where his shadow lay thick upon the land. But even after Melkor was cast into the void, even after the War of Wrath reshaped the world and the Elder Days came to an end, Orodruin remained. It did not cool. It did not sleep. The fires continued to burn, fed by something deeper than mere geology. The mountain stood as a silent witness to the ages, its heart still molten, its breath still hot, as if waiting for a purpose yet to be fulfilled. When Sauron, servant of Melkor, returned to Middle-earth in the Second Age, he wandered the lands seeking a place to rebuild his master's dominion. He came at last to Mordor, and there he found the mountain. Did he sense its history? Did he recognize in its flames the echo of Melkor's malice, or perhaps the lingering power of Allah's craft? Did he know that this was no ordinary volcano, but a relic of the world's shaping, a place where the boundaries between the seen and unseen were frayed and thin? We cannot know for certain. But what is clear is that Sauron did not choose Orodruin by chance. He studied it. He learned its secrets. He descended into its depths and walked where no other had dared to walk. And when he emerged, he knew how to bend the mountain's fire to his will. The forging of the One Ring was not merely a work of craft. It was a ritual, a binding, a merging of Sauron's essence with the primal fires of creation. He did not simply heat gold in a furnace. He poured his soul into the mountain's heart, and the mountain, in turn, gave him a power that would endure for 3,000 years. But power always demands a price. And the mountain, ancient, patient, and perhaps not entirely without will, took something from Sauron in that exchange. What it took, and whether Sauron even understood what he had given, are questions that haunt the deepest lore. The imagery is overwhelming. Picture rivers of molten rock flowing like serpents through caverns vast as cathedrals. Picture walls of black stone glowing red from within, veined with gold and crimson like the arteries of some vast, sleeping creature. Picture the roar of the flames, not the crackling of wood fire, but a sound deeper, resonant, like a voice singing in a language older than words. Picture the heat, so intense that it does not merely burn the flesh but seems to press upon the soul itself, as if the fire is aware, as if it is looking back at you with eyes of flame. This is the fire that shaped the world. This is the fire that Sauron claimed. And this is the fire that waits still, deep beneath the ash for something or someone to awaken it once more. But if the mountain predates Sauron, if its power is older than his malice, then a question burns brighter than any flame. Did something else claim the mountain before him? And if so, does it dwell there still? In the year 1000 of the Second Age, a shadow returned to Middle-earth. Sauron, once the greatest servant of Melkor, emerged from hiding and began to rebuild what his master had begun. He took many forms in those early days: a counselor to kings, a teacher of crafts, a bringer of gifts. The elves called him Anator, the Lord of Gifts, and for a time he walked among them, speaking words of wisdom and offering aid. But his true purpose was always singular: dominion. He wandered the lands, seeking a place to establish his seat of power. He sought somewhere defensible, somewhere dark, somewhere aligned with his nature. And so, inevitably, his steps turned eastward, toward the ashen wastes of Mordor, toward the mountains that Melkor had raised in the ancient wars, and toward the fire that had burned since the world's youth Orodruin. The texts do not tell us what Sauron felt when he first beheld Mount Doom. Was it recognition? Was it hunger? Did he see in its flames an echo of Melkor's malice, or did he sense something older still, a power that predated even the Dark Lord's corruption? Whatever he felt, it was enough to make him stay, enough to make him claim the mountain as his own. But claiming Orodruin was not a simple matter of conquest. This was not a fortress to be seized or a land to be occupied. The mountain was alive in ways that defied mortal understanding. Its fires did not obey the laws of nature. Its depths were uncharted, its heart inaccessible. To bend it to his will, Sauron would need to do more than command. He would need to understand. He would need to speak the mountain's true name. Sauron was no mere warlord. He was a Maya, a being of spirit and flame, a student of Allah the Smith before his fall. He understood the deep structures of matter, the hidden grammars of creation, the ways in which will could be impressed upon substance. Where others saw only fire and stone, Sauron saw potential. He saw a forge unlike any other in Middle-earth, a place where the boundaries between matter and spirit were thin, where enchantments could be wrought that would endure beyond the passing of ages. He descended into the mountain, not once, but many times. He walked the tunnels that no orc would dare to enter. He stood in chambers where the heat was so intense that the air itself shimmered and bent. He studied the flames, testing them, learning their nature. And slowly, over years or perhaps decades, he began to hear the mountain's voice, not in words, but in resonance, in the rhythm of its eruptions, in the way the magma surged and ebbed like the breath of some vast, dreaming thing. He learned that the fire of Orodruin was not merely hot, but hungry. It consumed not just wood and flesh, but enchantment itself. It could unmake what other fires could not touch. It could break bindings, dissolve wards, reduce even the mightiest artifacts to their constituent elements. This was a fire that remembered the music of the Aenir, the song that shaped the world, and it burned with a purity and a ferocity that lesser flames could never achieve. And Sauron understood that if he could harness this fire, he could forge something unprecedented. Not merely a ring of power, such as the elves had made, but a master ring. A ring that would bind all others. A ring into which he could pour his very essence, ensuring that his will would never fade as long as the ring endured. The forging of the One Ring was an act of supreme sorcery, but it was also something more. It was a ritual, a binding, an unholy marriage between Sauron and the mountain's fire. He stood in the Samath Nor, the chambers of fire at the very heart of Orodruin's power, and there he poured himself, his knowledge, his malice, his will into molten gold. The flames roared around him, hotter than any earthly forge, hotter than the fires that shaped the stars. And the mountain responded. It welcomed his offering. It accepted his essence. The inscription appeared on the ring not by Sauron's hand alone, but as if written by the fire itself. Black letters in the tongue of Mordor, visible only in flame, a mark of the covenant between the Dark Lord and the living mountain. One ring to rule them all, one ring to find them, one ring to bring them all, and in the darkness bind them. From that moment, Sauron was bound to Orodruin as surely as the ring was bound to him. His power flowed through the mountain's veins. His will hummed in its stone. He did not merely use the mountain, he became part of it. And in return, the mountain gave him a strength that no other being in Middle-earth could match. But there is a deeper truth here, one that Sauron may or may not have fully understood. The mountain did not simply obey him. It participated. It chose to give him its power. And in doing so, it claimed something in return, a portion of Sauron's essence, bound forever in the flames, inseparable from the mountain's heart. This is why the ring could only be destroyed in the fires of Mount Doom. Not because the flames were hot enough, though they were, but because the ring was of the mountain. It was forged from its fire, imbued with its power, bound to its existence. To destroy the ring, one had to return it to its source, to unmake the covenant between Sauron and Orodruin, to sever the bond that tied the Dark Lord's will to the mountain's flame. And when the ring was finally cast into the cracks of doom, when Gollum fell clutching it into the molten abyss, the mountain convulsed as though struck. The fires surged. The tunnels collapsed. The entire structure of Orodruin shuddered and roared, as if something vital had been torn from its heart. It was not merely the destruction of an artifact. It was the breaking of a bond that had endured for 3,000 years. But here is the question that haunts the lore, the question that no text fully answers. What price did Sauron pay for that forging? What did the mountain take from him in that dark covenant? And more troubling still, what did Orodruin gain? The cracks of doom are known to history. They are the fissure at the summit of Orodruin where Sauron forged the One Ring and where 3,000 years later it was destroyed. Frodo stood there. Gollum fell there. The fate of Middle-earth turned upon that narrow ledge of stone, suspended above a lake of fire that glowed with a light both terrible and mesmerizing. But the cracks of doom are not the deepest part of the mountain. They are merely the threshold, the visible wound, the place where the mountain's inner fire breaches the surface world. Beneath them, far beneath, lie chambers that no mortal has ever seen, corridors that descend into the mountain's true heart, where the heat is so intense that stone itself flows like water and the air shimmers with energies that predate the shaping of Arda. This is not mere speculation. The oldest texts hint at it. The Eldar, who dwelt in Middle-earth for uncounted ages, and whose memories reach back to the First Age, spoke of Orodruin as a place of layers, of visible fire above and hidden fire below, of chambers sealed by time and stone, of passages that lead not merely down, but inward, into spaces where the laws of the physical world bend and warp. Gandalf, who walked those halls in the last days of the Third Age, said little of what he saw. But in rare moments, he would speak of depths beyond the Samath Nor, of tunnels that branched and twisted in ways that defied mapping, of doors sealed with runes older than Sauron's dominion. He did not venture into those depths, for his purpose was the ring, and the ring's fate was bound to the cracks above. But he knew they were there, and he knew that they were not empty. Imagine descending into the mountain, past the known chambers, past the forges where orcs labored in Sauron's service, past even the lava tubes that carry magma from the deep places to the surface. You descend into heat that is no longer merely physical, heat that presses upon the mind, that fills the lungs with a thickness beyond air, that makes thought slow and vision blur. The stone around you glows faintly, not from reflected light but from within, as if the walls themselves are alive. And then you come to a door. Not a door in the sense of wood or iron, but a seam in the rock, a place where the stone has been shaped deliberately by hands or will. Runes are carved into its surface, half melted by millennia of heat, their meanings obscured but their power unmistakable. They are not in the black speech. They are older. Perhaps Quenya, the high elven tongue. Perhaps Valorin, the language of the Valar themselves. Or perhaps something older still, a script from the days before language, when will alone could shape the world. What lies beyond that door? The texts do not say, but the lore offers fragments, whispers, possibilities. Some say that the chamber beyond is a forge, not Sauron's forge, but an older one, a place where Alla the smith worked in the elder days, shaping metals and testing the limits of creation. If this is true, then the tools of the Valar may still rest there, untouched for ages, imbued with a power that even Sauron did not dare to claim. Others whisper of a wound, a place where Melkor, in his rage, carved into the very bones of the world, leaving a scar that bleeds fire even now. They say that the fire wells of Orodruin are not natural, but deliberate, opened by Melkor's malice to pour corruption into the earth's deep places. And if Melkor carved those wells, then perhaps he left something behind, some fragment of his power, some echo of his will, sealed beneath the mountain to fester and grow. Still others speak of a prison. They say that Sauron, in his experiments and his cruelty, used the mountain's depths to imprison things that even he feared to destroy. Spirits of the slain, bound into stone. Creatures twisted beyond recognition, sealed in chambers where their screams cannot be heard. Prototypes of the rings of power, failed and dangerous, buried in lava so that they could never be found. And there is one more possibility, darker than all the rest. Some lore masters believe that the deepest chamber of Orodruin is not a place of imprisonment or craft, but a nexus, a point where the boundaries between the physical world and the unseen overlap. A place where the flames burn not just in Middle-earth, but in the spaces beyond, in the void where formless powers dwell. If this is true, then the fire of Orodruin is not merely a remnant of creation, but a gateway, a threshold between the worlds of matter and spirit. What would dwell in such a place? What could survive in such heat, such pressure, such proximity to the raw forces of existence? The mind recoils from imagining it, but the texts hint, obliquely, fearfully, that something does, something vast, something patient, something that has waited since before Sauron, since before Melkor, since the world was young and the music of the Aenir still echoed in the deeps. The atmosphere of these hidden chambers is oppressive beyond description. The walls glow with a dull red heat, veined with gold and black like the arteries of some titanic organism. The air is thick with fumes that twist thought and memory, that make the past and present blur together. There is no sound but the roar of distant fire and the slow, rhythmic pulse of the mountain's heart. A beat so deep and slow that it feels less like sound and more like the ticking of some cosmic clock, counting down toward an end that has not yet come. And in the deepest chamber of all, where the stone is hottest and the air thickest, where the boundaries between reality and shadow grow thin, something pulses. A heartbeat, a presence, a thing that is not alive in any sense that mortals understand, but that is not dead either. It waits. It has always waited. And now, with Sauron fallen and the ring destroyed, it waits still, listening, breathing, remembering. There is fire, and then there is fire. The flames that warm hearths and light candles. The flames that consume forests and raise cities. These are fire. But the fire of Orodruin is something else entirely. It is older. It is deeper. It is not merely a tool or a force of nature. It is a presence, a will, a consciousness that burns with purposes mortals cannot fathom. Tolkien himself hinted at this in his letters and his unpublished writings. He described the fires of Mount Doom as being closer to the primal flames of creation than to any earthly combustion. They were, he suggested, a remnant of the fires that burned when Arda was first shaped, when the Valor descended from the timeless halls and gave form to the formless. These were not fires kindled by wood or oil, but fires born of the music of the Aenir, the great song that shaped the world, and twisted by the discord that Melkor introduced into that music. The fire of Orodruin does not behave as other fires behave. It does not need fuel. It does not dim with time. It burns with a heat so intense that it can melt mithril, dissolve adamant, unmake enchantments woven by the greatest craftsmen of the Eldar. Even the rings of power, objects imbued with the knowledge of the elves and the malice of Sauron, could only be destroyed in this flame. Why? What gives it such authority? The answer lies in its nature. The fire of doom is not subject to the laws of the physical world in the same way that common flames are. It exists in multiple realms simultaneously, burning in Middle-earth, yes, but also reaching into the unseen, the realm of spirit and shadow where the true forms of things dwell. This is why it can consume not just matter but essence. This is why it can unmake what lesser fires cannot touch. But there is something more. Something that the texts hint at but never fully explain. The fire seems to possess a will. Not intelligence, perhaps, not consciousness in the way that elves or men are conscious, but something closer to instinct, a purpose, a direction, a sense of what it is meant to do. Consider the evidence. When Sauron forged the One Ring, the fire responded to his will, obeying his commands, shaping the gold according to his design. But it did more than obey. It participated. The inscription that appeared upon the ring, the black letters visible only in flame, was not carved by Sauron's hand. It emerged from the fire itself, as if the flames recognized the covenant being made and sealed it with their own mark. When Isildur cut the ring from Sauron's hand and claimed it for his own, the fire did not react. It burned as it had always burned, indifferent to the fate of the ring outside its domain. But when Frodo stood at the cracks of doom, when he held the ring over the abyss and felt its pull, the fire seemed to surge, as if aware of what was about to happen, as if waiting for the ring's return. And when Gollum seized the ring and fell into the chasm, when the ring at last touched the flames, the mountain convulsed. The fire roared with a fury that shook the very foundations of Mordor. It was not merely the heat of combustion. It was something deeper, rage, perhaps, or triumph, or pain. The mountain erupted as though struck, as though something vital had been torn from its heart. This is not the behavior of mindless flame. This is the behavior of a force that recognizes, that remembers, that responds to the presence or absence of what it was bound to. Some lore masters go further. They suggest that the fire of Orodruin is not merely a remnant of the world's shaping, but a fragment of one of the Ainur themselves, a shard of will and power, broken off in the cataclysms of the Elder Days and trapped within the mountain's core. If this is true, then the fire is not a tool at all, but a prisoner, a being of immense power, bound and constrained, forced to serve purposes not its own. Others whisper that the fire is a remnant of Melkor's own essence, poured into the mountain when he shaped Mordor in the ancient wars. They say that the flame burns with his malice, that it hungers as he hungered, that it seeks to dominate and consume as he sought to dominate and consume. And if this is true, then every enchantment wrought in that fire carries a taint, a shadow of the Dark Lord's corruption that can never be fully cleansed. But perhaps the truth is simpler and more terrible still. Perhaps the fire is simply what it appears to be, a force of nature elevated beyond nature, a flame that has burned for so long and with such intensity that it has become something more than flame. Perhaps it has developed a kind of awareness through sheer duration, through millennia of burning in the deeps, watching, waiting, consuming all that comes within its reach. Whatever its nature, one thing is certain: the fire of Orodruin obeys no master. Sauron bent it to his will, but he did not control it. He used its power, but he did not own it. And when the ring was destroyed, when the covenant between them was broken, the fire did not die. It dimmed, it quieted, but it did not die. And if the flame has a will, if it has purposes that transcend the rise and fall of dark lords and the forging and unmaking of rings, then one question remains, burning brighter than any fire. What has it been waiting for all these ages? And is it waiting still? Sauron was many things, a deceiver, a tyrant, a sorcerer of unmatched skill. But he was also an experimenter, a creator. A being who sought to understand the deepest structures of reality so that he might bend them to his will. And like all who pursue knowledge without restraint, he left behind him a trail of failures, abominations, and horrors too terrible to be allowed to exist in the light of day. Mount Doom was not merely his forge. It was his laboratory, his workshop, his vault. And in its depths, in tunnels and chambers sealed by stone and spell, he buried the results of experiments that even he dared not continue, the remnants of creations that even he feared to unleash. The texts are silent on these matters. The chronicles of the Third Age speak of Sauron's armies, his fortresses, his strategies of war. They do not speak of what lay beneath. The wise did not venture into those depths after the fall of Barad-dûr. The orcs who survived fled into the wilderness and did not return. The mountain stood silent, its secrets sealed, its horrors left to slumber in darkness and flame. But whispers remain. Dark rumors carried by those who walked too close to Mordor's borders in the years after the War of the Ring. Tales told in hushed voices by the few orcs who were captured and interrogated. Fragments of knowledge salvaged from the ruins of the Dark Tower, written in scripts that scholars dared not fully translate. Consider first the failed experiments. Sauron sought to create servants, creatures bound to his will, immune to fear or pain, capable of enduring conditions that would destroy ordinary flesh. He succeeded in part, creating the orcs, the trolls, the Nazgul. But for every success, there were failures. Creatures that were too unstable, too unpredictable, too dangerous even for him to control. What became of those failures? Some were destroyed outright, their bodies burned or cast into the abyss. But others, those that could not be killed, that regenerated or refused to die, were imprisoned. Sealed in chambers deep within the mountain, where the heat would keep them dormant and the stone would keep them contained. There they remain, even now, locked in a state between life and death, waiting in the darkness for a release that may never come. Imagine walking those tunnels. The walls are not smooth stone, but irregular, fused and melted by heat, lined with the remnants of iron chains and shackles corroded beyond recognition. The air is thick with the stench of sulfur and something else, something organic, something rotten, as if flesh has been burning slowly for centuries without ever quite being consumed. You hear sounds in the distance, not the roar of fire, but something softer, more unsettling. A scraping, a breathing. A low, rhythmic moan that might be wind through stone, or might be something else. And then you see them. The walls are not walls at all, but crypts, alcoves carved into the stone, each one sealed with a slab of black iron inscribed with runes of binding. Behind those slabs, something moves. Something presses against the stone, slow and relentless, as if testing its strength. The iron is pitted and scarred, as if clawed from within, but it holds. For now, what lies behind those doors? The texts do not say, but the lore offers hints. Some speak of the unhoused spirits of men or elves who died under torture, their souls bound by Sauron's sorcery into forms of shadow and malice, unable to pass beyond the circles of the world. These were among his most loyal servants in life, but in death they became something else. Wraiths without the power of the Nazgul, driven mad by their existence, useful only as guards or executioners in the deepest dungeons of Mordor. Others whisper of the Beastmen, creatures fashioned from the flesh of captured prisoners, twisted and reshaped through dark alchemy into forms that were neither human nor animal. Sauron sought to create warriors stronger than orcs, more obedient than men. He succeeded in creating monsters, but they were too savage, too unpredictable. They turned on their handlers. They had to be destroyed, or so it was believed. But if even one survived, sealed in the mountain's depths, what might it have become after 3,000 years of darkness and hunger? There are also tales of the Shadow Forged, artifacts of power that Sauron created in his attempts to replicate the One Ring's mastery. Rings, amulets, blades, objects into which he poured fragments of his will, testing the limits of enchantment, seeking to understand the principles that would allow him to bind all of Middle-earth. Most of these objects failed. They shattered or turned on their makers or proved too unstable to wield. But a few, a precious, dangerous few, were deemed too potent to destroy and too perilous to keep. These were sealed in vaults beneath the mountain, surrounded by wards and buried under stone, so that no one would ever find them. And then there are the prisoners, not orcs, not men, but beings of another kind entirely. Spirits captured in the wars of the Second Age. Maiar who served Melkor and survived his fall, hiding in Middle-earth until Sauron found them and bound them to his service. Some he used as lieutenants, as sorcerers in his armies, but others resisted. Others retained too much of their former power, too much independence. These could not be killed. Maiar do not die as mortals die, but they could be imprisoned, bound in stone, sealed in fire, left to endure in torment until the end of days. Are they there still? Do they linger in the mountain's depths, trapped in forms of smoke and shadow, waiting for a release that will never come? Or did they escape when the mountain erupted, when the wards that bound them were shattered by the ring's destruction? The texts do not say, but the thought is chilling. Finally, there is the darkest rumor of all. A tale whispered only in the most secret councils of the wise, spoken of in fragments and riddles because to speak it plainly would be to invite despair. It is said that in the deepest vault of Orodruin, sealed behind doors that not even Sauron could open, lies a relic of the Elder Days, a fragment of Melkor's own power, broken off in the War of Wrath and buried beneath the mountain to prevent it from ever being used again. What form does it take? A shard of darkness, crystallized into matter. A weapon of unimaginable destructive force. A seed of corruption that, if released, could poison the very roots of the world. The Valor themselves placed it there, the stories say, sealing it in fire so that none would dare to seek it, trusting that the heat of Orodruin would keep it dormant until the world's ending. But if that relic exists, if it lies buried in the mountain's heart, then what happens now that Sauron has fallen and the ring is destroyed? Do the wards still hold? Does the fire still burn hot enough to keep it contained? Or has something shifted in the mountain's depths, something that allows the old horrors to stir, to wake, to begin their slow climb toward the surface? The mountain is silent now. The fires have dimmed. The armies of Mordor are scattered. But beneath the ash and stone, in the tunnels that no one dares to walk, something waits. And the orcs, in their darkest songs, still sing of a prisoner, a horror buried by the Dark Lord himself, too terrible even for him to destroy, sealed in the mountain's heart until the world's ending. But the world did not end. And the prisoner, they whisper, is still there. When the One Ring fell into the fires of Mount Doom, when its molten gold dissolved into the flames and its power was unmade, the consequences rippled across Middle-earth like a shockwave. Barad-dûr collapsed into rubble. The Nazgul were swept away on winds of flame. Sauron's armies broke and fled. There was no longer bound to his. The Dark Lord himself was diminished beyond recovery, reduced to a shadow so faint that even the wise could not perceive it. The age of Sauron was over. The mountain erupted in fire and fury, vomiting ash and lava across the plains of Gorgoroth, and when the flames subsided, the land fell silent. Mordor became a wasteland once more, lifeless and still, a monument to ruin. But the lore hints at something that the histories do not record, something that survived. In the months and years following the War of the Ring, travelers who ventured near the borders of Mordor, those few brave or foolish enough to walk those cursed lands, reported strange sightings. They spoke of smoke rising from the ruins, not in columns as from ordinary fire, but in shapes, coils and spirals, twisting in ways that smoke should not twist. They spoke of voices carried on the wind, not words but whispers, rhythmic and repetitive, as if something were chanting in a language older than speech. Some dismissed these as the ravings of men broken by fear, the tricks of wind and shadow on weary minds. But others, scholars, lore masters, those who had studied the deep histories, wondered if perhaps something had endured. Something that had been bound to the mountain, tied to its fire, too deeply rooted to be destroyed when Sauron fell. The texts are fragmentary and contradictory, but they suggest three possibilities, each more unsettling than the last. The first is that an echo of Sauron himself remains. Not his spirit, that was diminished beyond recovery, but a fragment, a shard of will and malice that he poured into the mountain when he forged the ring. When the ring was destroyed, that fragment was severed from him, cut loose, left to drift in the mountain's depths like smoke in a closed room. It has no power to act, no strength to rebuild, but it remembers, it hates. And it waits, hoping that some dark sorcerer, some foolish seeker of power, might one day descend into the mountain and give it a vessel, a body, a chance to rise again. The second possibility is darker still. Some lore masters believe that the fire of Orodruin itself survived the eruption, not as a physical flame, but as a presence, a will that had grown aware over millennia of burning. They suggest that the fire, having been bound to the ring and to Sauron, gained a kind of sentience through that binding, and that when the ring was destroyed, the fire was not extinguished but freed. Released from its covenant with the Dark Lord, it now drifts through the ruins of Mordor, a disembodied consciousness of flame and shadow, seeking what? Purpose, revenge, a new master to serve or to consume. The third possibility is the most disturbing of all. There are whispers, never confirmed, never denied, that something older than Sauron dwelt in the mountain's depths. Something that was there before he arrived, something that he bound or bargained with when he forged the ring. And when the ring was destroyed, when Sauron's power was broken and his wards shattered, that ancient thing was released. What could it be? A Maya, trapped in stone since the Elder Days, finally set free. A fragment of Melkor's malice, sealed by the Valor after the War of Wrath, now broken loose. Or something even older, a remnant of the primordial discord, a shard of chaos from the music of the Aenir, given form and trapped in the mountain's heart until the binding that held it was undone. The imagery is haunting. Picture the ruined slopes of Orodruin in the years after the ring's destruction. The summit is shattered, the cracks of doom now a gaping wound in the mountainside. Ash covers the land for miles in every direction, gray and lifeless. But in the deepest vents, in the cracks where the lava once flowed, a faint glow remains. Not red, but black, a darkness that seems to emit light in reverse, drawing in the eye and refusing to release it. And in that darkness, something moves, not with the solidity of flesh, but with the fluidity of smoke. It coils and uncoils, testing the boundaries of its new freedom, stretching tendrils of shadow across the stone, as if learning how to exist in the physical world once more. Those who have seen it, or claim to have seen it, describe a presence that is neither alive nor dead, neither corporeal nor entirely spirit. It does not speak, but it exerts a pressure on the mind, a weight of malice and hunger that makes thought difficult and courage falter. It does not move quickly, but it is patient. It has waited for ages. It can wait longer still. And the question that haunts the lore, the question that no scholar can answer, is this: what does it want? Is it mindless, a remnant of power without purpose, doomed to drift through the ruins until the world's ending? Or is it aware, intelligent, planning, waiting for the right moment to act? A final tremor shakes the mountain, faint but unmistakable. The stones shift. The ash settles. And in the deepest darkness, where the fire once burned brightest, something breathes, something watches, something remembers. The war ended. The armies disbanded. The heroes of the Fellowship passed into legend or departed over the sea. Middle-earth entered a new age, an age of men, of cities rebuilt, of peace hard-won and carefully maintained. Mordor was left to its own ruin, a land too cursed to be reclaimed, too poisoned to be inhabited. The plains of Gorgoroth remained barren. The towers of the Black Gate crumbled into dust, and Mount Doom, shattered and silent, stood as a monument to the evil that had been defeated. But Orodruin did not die. In the years following the ring's destruction, travelers and scouts reported that the mountain, though quieter, had not gone dormant. Smoke still rose from its broken summit, thinner than before but persistent, as if the fires beneath had dimmed but not extinguished. The lava flows had ceased, but heat still radiated from the vents and cracks, enough to scorch flesh if one ventured too close. The land around it remained lifeless. No grass, no trees, no animals dared to approach the blackened slopes. Geologically, this is not unusual. Volcanoes can smolder for centuries after a major eruption, their magma chambers slowly cooling, their internal fires gradually subsiding. But Orodruin's persistence felt different. It felt deliberate, as if the mountain were not merely cooling but waiting, resting, gathering strength. The wise, what few remained in Middle-earth, did not speak of the mountain often. But when they did, their words were cautious, tinged with unease. Gandalf, before he departed over the sea, warned that some wounds in the earth run too deep to heal. That Orodruin had been a place of power for millennia, bound to forces older than Sauron, and that such bindings do not break cleanly. He did not elaborate. He did not need to. Elrond, in his last days in Rivendell, wrote of the mountain in his journals. He described it as a scar upon the world, a place where the fabric of Arda had been torn and stitched back together imperfectly. He suggested that as long as the mountain stood, a shadow would linger over Middle-earth, not a shadow of armies or conquest, but of memory, of the evil that had been wrought there and the power that had been unleashed. And there were other signs, disturbing signs. In the Fourth Age, rangers who patrolled the borders of Mordor reported strange phenomena. tremors in the earth, too regular to be natural. Sounds echoing from the mountain at night, low, resonant, like the beating of a vast drum deep underground. Lights flickering in the ruins of the Samath Nor, brief and faint, visible only to those who watched from a great distance. No one investigated. No one dared to descend into the mountain's depths to discover the source of these disturbances. The memory of Sauron was still too fresh, the fear of Mordor still too great. And so the mountain was left alone, watched from afar, its secrets buried once more beneath stone and ash. But the question remained, whispered in the councils of the wise and debated in the halls of scholars. What had the destruction of the ring truly accomplished? Had it merely ended Sauron's dominion, or had it broken something deeper? Had the mountain been freed from its bond to the Dark Lord, or had it been wounded in a way that would never fully heal? Some believed that the fire of Orodruin, having burned for so long in service to Sauron, had become corrupted beyond redemption. That even with the ring destroyed, the mountain's flames carried a taint, a shadow of the malice that had been poured into them. They argued that Orodruin should be sealed, its tunnels collapsed, its vents buried beneath stone, so that nothing, no power, no creature, no dark sorcerer, could ever use its fire again. Others disagreed. They pointed out that the mountain was a relic of the world's shaping, a force tied to the very bones of Arda. To destroy it would be to wound the earth itself, to risk consequences that no one could predict. Better to leave it as it was, watched, avoided, but intact. And so Orodruin stands even now in the ruined land of Mordor, a broken peak, a shattered throne, a wound that bleeds smoke instead of blood, a fire that burns low but does not die. The mountain rests, but it does not sleep. There are places in the world where history is not merely remembered but felt. Where the past presses upon the present like a weight, where the air itself seems heavy with memory, where the stones and the soil carry echoes of what has been. These are not places of peace. They are places of power, of tragedy, of deeds so great or so terrible that they have imprinted themselves upon the fabric of reality itself. Orodruin is such a place. Long after the ring was destroyed, long after Sauron fell and Mordor was left to ruin, the mountain remains. Not as it was, its summit shattered, its fires dimmed, but still present, still standing, a monument to everything that was forged and broken within its depths. And those who study the deep lore, who read the oldest texts and listen to the most ancient songs, understand that Orodruin is not merely a mountain. It is a memory, a scar, an echo that will resonate until the world's ending. The fire that burns within it, or that burned, or that waits to burn again, is not like other fires. It is a fire that remembers. It remembers the shaping of Arda, when the Valar sang the world into being and Melkor twisted the music with his discord. It remembers the wars of the Elder Days, when mountains were razed and shattered in the conflicts between the powers. It remembers Sauron, who stood within its heart and poured his essence into molten gold, binding his will to the flames in a covenant that endured for 3,000 years. And it remembers the ring, the weight of it, the power of it, the feel of it dissolving in the magma, its enchantments unraveling, its malice returning to the fire from which it was born. The mountain does not think as mortals think, does not reason or plan, but it holds within it the imprint of everything that has touched it, everything that has been shaped or destroyed within its depths. This is why Orodruin will never be just stone and fire. This is why it will never be safe. Not because Sauron might return. He will not. but because the mountain itself has become something more than a natural formation. It has become a repository of power, a nexus where the boundaries between matter and spirit remain thin, where the echoes of ancient deeds still linger like smoke in a closed room. In the Fourth Age and beyond, scholars and kings debate what should be done about Mordor. Some argue for reclamation, tearing down the ruins, filling in the pits, planting trees and grass to cover the scars. Others insist that the land should be left as it is, a reminder of the cost of tyranny, a warning to future generations. But no one speaks seriously of rebuilding on those plains, and no one suggests that Orodruin should ever be disturbed, because the mountain is not empty. It never has been, and those who walk too close to its slopes, who venture into the tunnels that remain open, who stand at the edge of the cracks of doom and look down into the depths, report a feeling that cannot be easily described. A pressure, a presence, a sense that something is watching, waiting, listening. Not Sauron, not any spirit or creature with a name, but the mountain itself, the fire, the stone. The memory of what was wrought there, and the potential for what might yet be wrought, if someone with the knowledge and the will were to descend into its depths and claim its power once more. The peace of Middle-earth is fragile. It always has been. The valor departed from the world long ago, leaving it to the stewardship of elves and men. The great powers of the elder days are gone or diminished. The wise have passed over the sea. What remains is a world less magical, less grand, but also, so it is hoped, less vulnerable to the rise of new dark lords. But Orodruin remains. And as long as it stands, as long as its fires burn, as long as the memory of what was forged there lingers in the stone and the flame, the possibility of darkness returning remains as well. Not in the form of Sauron, his time is over, but in the form of someone else. Some new seeker of power. Some ambitious sorcerer or corrupted king who hears the whispers in the smoke, who dreams of the mountain's fire, who believes that they can succeed where Sauron failed. The text's close with a warning, a reflection. A prophecy, perhaps, or simply a truth that the wise have always known. The world is full of wounds that do not heal, full of fires that do not die, full of echoes that will not fade. And Orodruin, the mountain of doom, the forge of the ring, the wound of Mordor, is the greatest of these. It stands now as it has always stood, silent but not empty, dark but not dead, waiting with a patience that spans ages. The fire dims, the smoke rises, the stone endures. And in the deepest darkness, where the magma still churns and the heat still presses upon the limits of endurance, a single ember glows. Faint, persistent, alive, as if breathing, as if waiting, as if remembering. Dear listener, this story ends, but many await. Subscribe so no tale escapes you.